While the Star Torch Academy and Lahai-Roi is a futuristic place full of optimism, it doesn't take much peeling beneath the surface to realize that something is wrong. In fact, many of the lore entries you can read, the world you explore, and even other things like achievements paint a picture that is staggeringly pessimistic. While students chit-chat, electric sheep graze in the fields, and you climb up neo-futurist Stonehenge with your motorcycle that has the traction power of a mountain goat, every single aspect of the seemingly cheerful world you're exploring seems to paint a picture that the Armageddon is coming any day now, that Lahai-Roi is, to put it bluntly, screwed. While you may have caught some lore entries once in a while that are unsettling and seem a little bit off, in this video I want to try and compile and analyze all the clues that Kuro has been throwing indirectly at us to hint that things in Lahai-Roi are probably going to get bad really quickly.
What is it?
It's not good news.
I guess that.
To start, we have to look into what is probably going to happen next update, with the fall of the sun. As many people probably know, the next update will primarily be focused on the launch of Helios and the new solar ceremony, which, as we guessed in previous videos, which I recommend watching if you haven't already, we guessed that the reactor husk will be the focus boss of the update. This comes from the overarching Norse mythology of Ragnarok, where the reactor husk, very likely being an analogue of Fenrir, will eat the sun and cast the world into darkness. This assertion is substantiated by two things. First, Kuro tweeting a reactor husk overview right before 3.0.2 was coming out, and secondly, the music video for the 3.0 update showing us what seems to be direct cutscenes on the reactor husk, or really, Fenrir if we're correct, standing over a broken, ashen sky with the reactor drive falling in the background. However, this is not all. As we know, the launching of Helios requires two Exostrider-based creations to function properly: Hyvatia, the calculator, and the reactor husk, the protection system. One thing I find interesting is that the achievement names for killing each of these boss monsters are rather startling. For Hyvatia, it is the night when the drive fell, referencing the fall of the reactor drive we saw in the 3.0 music video, as well as something else that we're going to cover later. But even more ominously, for the reactor husk it is Dies Irae, Latin for the Day of Wrath. While Dies Irae can refer to many things, it is most commonly used to refer to the Day of Judgment, known by other names in Christian canon such as the Last Judgment, the Second Coming of Christ, or, for some others, the Armageddon. However, even though this is concerning, it is not the only clue we have that some sort of doomsday is approaching. While the symbolism and references for the Academy side of things is more biblical, we know that the Royan side is heavily inspired by a modern techno take on Norse mythology. The Roi people have been in Lahai-Roi since before the Exostrider, and within Royan history we can see that the Lament and Frenodian are considered events that are referred to as epochs. The end of the first epoch resulted in the emergence of the Etheric Sea in the skies over Solaris 3, and the second epoch began with the work of the Frenodian Aleph I and the Great Glacial Lock, which made the surface uninhabitable. It was during this time that the Exostrider Baldur fought the Frenodian Virunga, resulting in the latter being trapped and the former slumbering as it used its heart, the reactor drive, to make a world for its people underground, which we now know as Lahai-Roi. However, in the lore entry for Giant's Gaze, it's noted that the final days of the second epoch have now begun to overlap the dawn of the third. As we discussed in Norse terms in our previous videos, this new epoch is the equivalent of Ragnarok, or the end of the world, having already begun. The end of the world-esque period is further referred to within the lore for Fangspire Chasm as the despairing beginning of the Twilight Epoch, that the Roya have been anticipating for in fear, a time that may very well bring on the end of the world. When we look at the condition of Lahai-Roi, which is the land of the humans, our prospects are also very negative. The lore for Star Torch Academy notes that the reactor drive's energy is not eternal, with this being corroborated in the Etching Plains lore, which describes these in more detail. The exoswarm that we see around the map, the plants and animals that roam Lahai-Roi, are effectively a recovery system for the Exostrider. They are deployed, and once they harvest enough energy, they return to the Exostrider to help rebuild and repower it. However, the exoswarm that are so essential for the Exostrider's recovery have been dwindling. And within the Star Torch Academy lore, we learn that the alternate approach is to strengthen the Exostrider through resonance, which is why the Academy, the Synchronous, and people like Amith are required to bolster the Exostrider's power in the absence of its natural recovery system. However, as you can probably guess, time is very quickly running out. If we look at the situation in Lahai-Roi from the perspective of the Norse mythology and Ragnarok that underpins the Royan Trine myths, things are definitely not looking good, as we've gone through in previous videos. The Great Glacial Lock, an ice age that drove the Royans underground, is similar to the never-ending Fimbulvinter of Norse myth. The Frenodian Aleph-1, or Virunga, otherwise known as Loki, is already damaging the Strider Gate as it tries to break free, similar to the evil dragon Nithogga, chewing at the roots of the World Tree Yggdrasil. The Exostrider, Balder, is slumbering and in critical condition from its fight with the Frenodian Virunga, similar to how Loki tricked Balder's brother to kill him. The Voidworms have already risen and begun thrashing about, like the World Serpent Jormungandr, who wreaked chaos before coming to land. And in the next update, another one of Loki's children, Fenrir, in the form of the reactor husk who may be corrupted and try to interfere with the new solar ceremony and the launch of Helios, may, metaphorically, as in Norse myth, eat the sun. All the signs that we've seen so far are the occurrences that begin Ragnarok, the chain of events that will end the world. This twilight epoch, this end of the world, is expressed even more succinctly when you read the descriptions for Lahai-Roi's Forgery Challenges, which are made up of 2 sanctums and 3 lessons. The sanctums have descriptions relating to how the Exostrider will fail to protect Lahai-Roi, while the lessons comprise visions of how the Frenodian will destroy it. While the lessons prophesize the Void Swarm swallowing Lahai-Roi and the warning that it gives civilizations of the dangers of overambition and going against God, similar to the Promethean, Babel, and Icarus motifs already being used in the design language of Lahai-Roi, the sanctums are particularly interesting because they speak of how the manufactured divinity of humans, the Exostrider, will fail to protect them. We already know from countless lore entries that a doomsday for Lahai-Roi is quick approaching. Whether you see this through the lens of the Norse Ragnarok or the Abrahamic Day of Judgment, the Dies Irae, we know that some sort of Armageddon is coming. When the sun falls, it may mean more than just the snuffing out of light. As the Etching Plain lore entry says, should the Exostrider undergo complete death, its corresponding reactor drive will inevitably be extinguished as well. The Forgery Challenge, Fallen Sanctum, gives a terribly prophetic vision of this. The dome is shattered, and what light remains illuminates overgrown ruins. Amidst thick weeds, the dying reactor drive holds onto the mere memory that it once was a sun. Within the frame of Wuthering Waves, we see that this end of the world is most likely to be brought on by the connection of a dual frequency that the Exostrider is stopping the Frenodian from connecting with each other. In our previous video, we already explored the law of the rebirth uplands and hypothesized that when the Frenodian's energy connects with the Exostrider, or the Sun God's energy at the top of the world, then existence itself would end. This connects well to the description of the Stricken Sanctum Forgery Challenge, where something is name-dropped that we have never heard of before, the Heliogaia. Based on the name, I theorize that this is actually the mythical core of the Exostrider's reactor drive, which is corroborated by the lore from the Etching Plains once again, which suggests that the reactor drive is on a different tier of creation, and the rest of the exostriata, which means it could possibly hold the divine energy from the Royan's god Sol. If the Heliogaia, with the power of the sun, is to be corrupted by the energy of the void, then the light of the sun could erase existence instead of providing life. Perhaps this is the cataclysmic uniting of the dual-source connection that has been talked about in the Rebirth Uplands lore. As we loom on the edge of the launch of the new sun and perhaps the fall of the old, we are presented with dusk, a concept that Kuro has used excessively to symbolize the onset of disaster and the lament.
Dusk has brought the dawn of my fears. Get out of how it happens in the light, and shine and shadow a tomb built of night.
While, on the other hand, dawn is a resisting and pushback of this. With this, the term that the Royans use, the third epoch or the twilight epoch, is quite fitting. Because what is twilight after all? Twilight is a time when the last of the sun's rays are swallowed by the grip of the night's eternal darkness.
I don't want to set the world